Aqua friends, thanks for joining me today. My name's Nicole and today I'm going to do a Christmas card. So I have used my temporary adhesive paper to block out my Christmas bulb. And for the smaller little lights that are going to be on the tree that I want to preserve some of that white, I'm going to be using masking fluid as well as a sponge dauber. So once you have your sponge dauber, you want to do the same thing with the sponge dauber that you would do using an old brush for masking fluid. So you want to keep one or two of these just for masking fluid, and you also want to pre-wet it and then dab it in some soap and get it really nice and soapy. That helps tremendously to reuse it, and you're able to wash out the latex. And basically, I think I've reused this one about 4 or 5 times. So it works like a charm, but the sponge shape is still perfect and it's not marred by my masking fluid yet because I used the soap. So I have my sponge very well seasoned, I guess you could say, with lots of soap. And I'm just going to dip it in and I leave it nice and juicy like that. So there is a light right here. And I don't care that it's like not completely circular, because these lights are kind of amongst the pine needles. So I plan on making it very irregular anyways. I just kind of want to make sure that I do have some areas where all the needles and stuff aren't going to be going over the light part. Be one down here. So yeah, there's just a few, possibly kind of one there. Okay. So, and that is it. Now, when you are done with your sponge, you do want to go rinse it out right away. So I'll be right back. So at this point, obviously, we need to let this dry really well, and then we'll get into the fun background where the window pane is. Okay, so our masking fluid is dry. Now we're going to start with that background window. And we want to wet this area really well and have your palette ready and spray the colors that you're going to be using for those blues, and so that they're nice and juicy. So I'm going to go ahead with my flat brush and we are going to wet the background. Now, I'm not worried about wetting the left-hand side where the tree is too much. There is an area here that I want to put in the color of the wall behind the tree. So I am going to wet around the bulb here on this side, but as far as the rest of it, that's all pine needles and I don't care to wet that part. So when I look at this reference photo, like I said, this whole background is out of focus, including the window pane lines. Right now, I just want to concentrate on getting my blues in, this manganese blue. I want it to be very, very soft because we're going to be building up our blues in this background. Kind of looks like a building across the street from this reference photo. I'm just going to put in some of these horizontal and vertical lines that I'm seeing in the reference photo. I'm just putting in these structures. Like I said, everything is really out of focus, so we don't want to overthink this, but I do want some of these contrasts that we see in the window here. So while this is wet, is a good time for us to put down any snow effects that we want. I have my favorite opaque white for watercolor is using the Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. I really like this white. Oh gosh, look at this. I'm like dropping it everywhere. Before I drop it on here, I just want to make sure when I do a little sprinkles off to the side that I'm not gonna get too much of a big blob. I love this fan brush because see how far out it's spread and how the really juicy paint here collects quite nicely, so that when you do go to splash it, it's already really nicely moved apart and it makes a lot of different splash marks, as you can see, some big, some small, and I really like that effect. So that part is our snow. So I'm pretty happy with the way that's looking. Now, in order to get the effect of the snow drifts going along our window, which I can still see the outlines of my window here, I think lifting would be a good technique to get some white back. And I don't want like really huge snow drifts. I just thought it would be kind of nice, kind of like a cozy, nostalgic feel that you're all cooped up inside where it's nice and warm and you can see the snow collecting on the windowsill. I could see it helping a little bit, and it's probably really hard for you guys to tell because it's really hard to see my lines for my window pane. I'm going to let this dry. Right now, I do want to get those warm colors in that are on the wall. There's like lights, and then the wall inside the house is kind of a very nice warm yellow-orange color. So I'm going to re-wet just behind the bulb where you do see the wall. I'm going to just re-wet that area a little bit. I have some quinacridone gold that I think will be very nice, along with whatever orange is in here. I think it's transparent pyrrole orange. So what we have here is contrasting colors. You got your orange and your blue, and this is kind of a really neat effect here. I like this color combination. Now there are some of those pine trees kind of coming in here on the side, just kind of working around where I can see it. And then you got part of the window, the side of the window here. And it's a lot more redder. So I could come in with my quinacridone red. Now there's like reflections on the inside. You got all these different decoration and light effects going on. So I'm just kind of dropping in. This is called charging in watercolor, when you drop in another color in already wet paint and it kind of spreads and does all these wonderful, cool effects all on its own, because that's how cool watercolor is. It basically paints itself. That's what I'm going to do here. Just dropping in a little bit of the red, the same red that I've used, quinacridone, whatever you have in your palette's fine. And I know it looks very weird and disconjointed right now because I don't have any of the tree in. Trust me, there is a method to my madness. A little bit of red showing through the trees up here. Don't want that to be too bright, but that's it. That's it for the first layer. We're going to do the window pane over top. The second layer, that will complete the background, and that'll be it for the background. And then we're going to have the fun part of doing the tree. We're going to let that whole thing dry, and I'll see you back in a second. Okay, so we're back, and now for the window pane, I'm going to be using some burnt sienna for that part. And I have this clear plastic ruler so that I could see my lines, and it does help to get a straight line when you're painting. So I'm going to go over this right where I need to, and I'm applying more pressure as I go so I can see exactly. And then I'm going to get my bottom line. Now to give it an out of focus look, I am just going to go along the edge with a wet brush, just to blur those lines a little bit. So not a sopping wet brush, so I'm going to tap it off on my towel here, but tap it. And the same thing with the top line. And I'm just doing one section at a time because I don't want it to dry, the paint to dry too much, and then I can't blur the edges. So that's fine, that's nice and straight. Now on the top of the window panes, I'm going to add a shadow of the snow with the same blue, and I'm going to blur it in the same way. Okay, so I'm just changing the shape of this background shape because I feel like this. Oh, so the shape looks like a ghost now. And so I'm going to mess around with that shape in the background because I don't want it to be the Nightmare Before Christmas. I want it to be just a really nice kind of Christmas. Because this is actually kind of like a door, or just to have a little bit of a line here to represent another geometric shape, not a ghost shape. Now on to the main attraction. I'm going to wet just the top part and we'll work the tree in some stages. We're going to start, as always, with our lightest colors. I have my Green Gold by Daniel Smith. I love this color, guys. So pretty. And it's actually like the perfect color for these pine needles that are like kind of backlit by all these lights that are in the tree. So just kind of dropping in that color so it's stronger. Now I'm switching over to my sap green. And then I'm just going to start doing some brush strokes that are kind of like pine needles. So while I'm looking at my reference photo, I'm kind of like looking at which pine needles kind of like jump out at me. And those are the ones that I can add some more details to. And you kind of have them going in different directions a little bit. Now I'm coming in with my shadow green. Alright, so I have a good amount of pigment on my paper. I'm going to switch to my calligraphy brush. I do love these natural bristles for doing a lot of nature stuff. I'm using thicker consistency of paint, and I'm just going to get those in, especially behind this light that I have masked out. Okay, so now what we did to the top of the tree, we're going to do to the bottom of the tree. So again, I'll start off just by wetting the bottom here. There is a branch that comes out. I'm not too worried about my water being a little green. We just want to wet this so we start off kind of soft and build up the strokes from there. And again, I'm going to start off with my lightest color, my green gold. Come in with that underlying color, especially where there's the masking fluid. It'll be a lot lighter. So moving on to my sap green. So I could get away with using a larger brush to pull out these pine needles because these black silver series brushes have a very nice fine point. Now if I feel like, looks like my paper's dry and this is a bigger area and I still want it to remain soft, so I'm going to dab some more water in here. So adding the shadow green in here as well. I am able to lift some lighter colors just by using a damp script liner brush here. So with these natural bristles, there's really not much of a snap, and so you could kind of separate the bristles a little bit, so it makes like these perfect textures for pine needles. Now we're going to wait for the whole thing to dry before we can take our masking fluid off to do the light effects. Okay, now for the big reveal. And we want to soften these edges. I have a secret weapon that I use, a magic eraser. Basically, we're just going to take a chunk out. Kind of gives it this like halo effect. Kind of cool, huh? And then I'm just coming in because I want the center to be a little bit more whiter, but I definitely kind of want this halo effect around it. So I'm just going to let this dry a little bit. Now mostly I'm going to use my green gold because being so close to the light source, it's going to be a lot lighter. And I don't need a lot, just a few strokes here. And I could pre-wet it, like if I want a softer effect of some of these pine needles. Now we can go ahead and take off the masking off of the Christmas bulb. I just got an idea. This might be overkill. If you guys don't want to do this step, you don't have to. But I'm noticing that there's like twinkly lights within the bulb itself. And it might be nice to use a combination of masking it out, kind of like what we did with this, but on a much smaller scale, and then rubbing around the masking fluid to get that sort of hazy effect. I think that would be cool, and there's a few spots where I could do that. So I'm just going to put a couple of dots where I see them here. This won't take long at all to dry. Don't use a hair dryer to dry the masking fluid. You'll be sorry. It'll probably not come out very well. Alright, so I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes, and then I can go ahead, mix up my red while I'm waiting for that to dry, and then we'll get started on the bulb. Okay, so I'm back. I got my reds ready. We're back with the Ghost of Christmas Past. I can't undo seeing that, even though I tried to change the lines on the background, but that's okay. That was a real good movie, right? So we'll get started here. We have this nice orb to work with. It's going to be fantastic. For the most part of the orb, I'm going to use my size 8 brush. And I'll start off with the warmer red. So I have some Scarlet Lake, I believe, in it. It's quite used up. I don't have too many warm reds. What is this? Yeah, this is Pyrrole Scarlet. I need to buy some more warm reds because, like, literally, this is the last of it. Okay, so just putting my first coat down. I'm going to be careful around the edges so that I have a nice shape. Okay, increasing my pigment. Some of the cooler red tones, which is my quinacridone red, I'm going to start putting around the edges. And then I also have permanent alizarin crimson, which is a nice, really deep red. The reflection in this bulb is like the reflection of the tree. So I'm just kind of tapping in these darker colors. And I do need to go even darker. So I'm going to add in my favorite thing to darken colors, which is my neutral tint. Now we do have to remember that our paint is going to dry 25% lighter. So since this is like the main attraction, the bulb is the main attraction, I have a feeling that I will be putting another coat on. Okay, so that's dry enough. I'm just going to increase the contrast. I really like the lighter reds going into the darker reds, but on this side where it has the reflections of the Christmas tree, that part has to be darker. And I'm kind of going to paint around the masking fluid because when I take that off and I smudge it, I want the red showing through more. I'm just feathering some of the edges. Some of the edges I don't want super sharp. Before we take off the masking fluid, we're going to let the bulb dry really well. Okay, removing the masking fluid. Now to get those hazy lights around here, I have to use a very tiny piece of my magic eraser, and I like to use a pair of tweezers when I'm going to work that small. Okay, so I actually want it really small because these are super small dots. So you see how that kind of just blurs it, softens it up. So it may seem tedious, but I think in the end, the effects are kind of worth the little tedious part we're going through here. So I think that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to dry it, and then I'm going to use an acrylic pen just to get really white dots back in the middle around all the fuzzies. And it makes it really look like it's glowing. All right, guys, sign your painting and you're done. You guys just created a masterpiece. So now the fun part, the tape. And I hate wasting anything, so I'm still using this old tape, but that's okay. It's going to be framed. And we'll see. Actually, the edges are pretty good. All right, so like I said, this is like such a perfect Christmas present or a card. You can mount this onto a nice piece of stock paper and make it into a card. I think it's so pretty. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you got lots of value out of this video, please like and subscribe. It helps me out on YouTube. And I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.